Ladies and gentlemen, and Mr. Gary, welcome to our webinar on the Cold War of Era and Heritage. I think we are very honored to have Mr. Gary Powers. He is the leader or the moderator of the Cold War Museum in United States. And this time we will invite Gary to introduce his museum and also some interesting things about the Cold War. Okay, Gary, are you ready?
Yes, Mr. Wang. Thank
Yes.
you so much for inviting me to be part of this presentation and do a video clip for your audience. My full name is Francis Gary Powers, Jr. I am the founder and chairman of the Cold War Museum, 45 miles west of Washington, D.C. I founded the museum in 1996 to honor Cold War veterans, preserve international Cold War history, and educate future generations about this time period. What I thought would take 3 years to build, fundraise $3 million, it took 15 years before we were able to open at Vint Hill, Virginia. Vint Hill Farm Station is an authentic Cold War historic site. It was used by the NSA, the CIA, and the Army Security Agency during the Cold War time period to monitor our enemy activities, primarily the Soviet Union. We opened officially in November of 2011. We are opened on the weekends, staffed by volunteers. We have a multi-million-dollar collection of artifacts, everything from civil defense to the USS Liberty incident, the USS Pueblo incident, overhead reconnaissance platforms such as the U-2, the SR-71, the KH, and or Corona satellite, spy satellite systems. We do have a small section on the Black Cat program out of Taiwan that the U-2s were flying back in the 60s. And we also have a variety of displays on various events and activities and personnel. Hundreds of flags, banners, regalia, hundreds of uniforms from East Germany, West Germany, the Soviet Union, America, and other countries involved in this time period. So I'm going to show and share my screen. I'm going to show a short video or two to see some of the collection in the museum, and then I'll continue to discuss what we're doing. So give me one moment, please. And this should work. So here we have the Cold War Museum, and you do see my screen, correct?
Yes, that's great.
Okay, good. So here we have the homepage. There's a variety of different drop-down menus where you can donate to the museum, learn about the museum, find out who our board of directors are. Under events, we host a monthly Zoom lecture where we invite a leading Cold War historian or an author to come in and give a 1-hour presentation. You can find out more about that when you click on the events page. If you'd like to become a member, you can join us. If you'd like to buy some of our books or novelty items such as challenge coins or other items, we have those at the store, shirts, hats, ties, things like that. We have a section on Cold War news, and then you can contact us through the contact page. This website is coldwar.org, coldwar.org. So that's the museum. Now I'm going to move over and talk a little bit about the museum. Did you see the new page here?
Yes, we can see now.
And it looks like me in front of a display.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the first video I'm going to show, and it'll give a little overview of one of our exhibits on both civil defense and or the U-2 incident. The reason I'm so interested in Cold War history is that my father was a U-2 pilot, Gary Powers. He was shot down over the Soviet Union May 1st of 1960. He was caught, captured, interrogated, and tried. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison. He served a total of 21 months in captivity before being exchanged for Soviet spy Colonel Rudolf Abel. This exchange took place at the Glännecker Bridge in Potsdam, Germany. Steven Spielberg did a movie in 2015 called Bridge of Spies, which talked about these historic events that my father was involved in. So that's why I'm interested in preserving this Cold War history. So we're going to show this first video, and then I'll talk some more afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to show 2 or 3 short videos and let the audience learn a little bit about the exhibits that we have on display. So this first one, I'm talking about the Cold War Museum, being the founder, and helping to educate future generations about this time period. Basically, what I said in my introduction is what I'm saying here. What you're seeing is a small section on civil defense in America, the duck and cover drills, and what we were doing back in the 50s and 60s to help prepare for a nuclear attack by the Soviet Union. We have hundreds of items from the National Civil Defense Headquarters in Washington, D.C. that we saved and salvaged back in about 2000 when we were able to go in and excavate all of these items and put them in our collection. To the right of me, or to my left shoulder, is an exhibit on the U-2 incident. Like I had mentioned, my father was the U-2 pilot who was shot down on May 1st of 1960. In the background, you can see the type of missile, the SA-2, that shot him down. The booster, the white part underneath the model, is an actual booster from that type of a missile. We have a silhouette of the U-2. We have some photographs of the SA-2 missile. We have a little section that we talk about the movie Bridge of Spies, which Spielberg did in 2015 that depicts this historic event. And there's also some information about the Glännecker Bridge where my father was exchanged. The next video, we'll talk a little bit more about civil defense. And in this video, you'll see me talking about civil defense. And we have the Geiger counters, we have the dosimeters, we have the fallout shelter signs, we have posters and other artifacts that were used in civil defense fallout shelters throughout America. There is a first aid kit to the left that would have been used in the civil defense fallout shelter should someone have a minor injury, a scrape, a bruise, a cut, a tourniquet, things to help prevent more blood loss. The table that's down here that the 3 or 4 yellow items are on, that is from Conorail. That was the radio broadcast system that would have alerted Americans throughout the country through radio frequencies that a surprise attack is happening or a nuclear attack. It's currently used to let people know about hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes. But back in the Cold War time, it would also have been talking about a nuclear attack and surprise attack. This last image and video is talking about human intelligence, HUMINT, image intelligence, EMINT, electronic intelligence, ELINT, and other forms of espionage that we use to gather information on foreign hostile countries. Here we have items from the Corona spy satellite and the KH spy satellite. They would jettison the film from outer space. A plane would come in with a net behind it. It would scoop up the satellite. They would reel it into the airplane. The canister of film would then be sent to Washington, D.C. for photographic interpretation. The very first successful Corona spy satellite happened in August of 1960, the same month that my father was being put on trial in the Soviet Union. So it's very interesting to see that my dad's trial was taking place August 17th to August 19th of 1960, and that's the same exact time period that the first successful Corona spy satellite was launched and the film retrieved. So that's some of the items that we have on display in the museum. I'm going to, we'll probably edit this for a moment. I'm going to go back out and go to the next website. So the next website that I'm going to talk about briefly is this one, spytour.com. As a result of growing up in this family, my dad was the U-2 pilot. My mother worked at the CIA also. That's where they met back in 1962 when my father came home from the Soviet Union after being exchanged for the Soviet spy. So I'm interested in Cold War history. I'm interested in espionage. So part of the things I do now is I run a Washington, D.C. spy tour. I will take guests who come to Washington, D.C. around, either in a charter bus or a small passenger van, and we will visit drop points, safe houses, and other clandestine locations in the Washington, D.C. area where spies were caught, captured, or killed. We will go by Aldrich Ames' home, Alger Hess's home, Wild Bill Donovan's home, and even a drop point used by Robert Hansen to contact his Soviet handlers in the Vienna, Virginia area. So that's one of the tours I offer in Washington, D.C. The others I offer are Cold War espionage tours of Europe. I'm doing my fourth one in 2026. My first one went to sites in Germany and the Czech Republic. My second one in 2024 went to sites in Austria, Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary. My one this year went to sites in England, Holland, and Germany. The one that's set for 2026 will go to sites in Berlin, Northern Germany, as well as Denmark. And here's a group photo of the last year's tour in front of the Glännecker Bridge. The Glännecker Bridge in Potsdam, Germany, is the bridge my father walked across when he was exchanged for the Soviet spy. So if you're interested in learning more about my efforts to preserve Cold War history, honor Cold War veterans, educate future generations about this time period, you can visit me online at garypowers.com, or you can learn more about the Spy Tour online at spytour.com, and you can find out the itinerary for the April 2026 tour. It's going to be a great tour, and I hope that some of you can join me to learn more about Cold War history in Germany and Denmark in April of 2026. So I'm now going to stop sharing and continue to talk a little bit with Mr. Wang. All right. So Mr. Wang, that's just a brief overview of the Cold War Museum, my efforts to preserve history and honor veterans, educate students, and my interest in Cold War history, as well as espionage history. When I'm not doing tours, I'm an author, a historian, and a speaker. I've got several books published. My first one, Letters from a Soviet Prison. These are my dad's letters to and from his family and the journal he kept while incarcerated in prison. So a primary source document. My second book came out in 2019, Spy Pilot. 35 years of research, 5 years to write it, sets the record straight. Takes my father's reputation from infamy and controversy in the 60s to an American hero today. As a result of my research, my father was posthumously awarded, after his death, the POW Medal and the Silver Star by the United States government. So we're very honored that they were able to finally recognize Dad as a hero to our country. My third book is for a younger audience, Enemy Territory. It is a graphic novel, a cartoon, to teach kids about the U-2 incident. My fourth book came out last year, The Berlin Airlift, another graphic novel, cartoon, to teach kids about Cold War history. And my most recent book that came out July 1st of last year is Cold War Virginia. We talk about historic Cold War sites in the Commonwealth of Virginia, the Nike missile systems near Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia, my dad, who was a native Virginian. He was born in Virginia. We also talk about other Virginians, such as General George Marshall of the Marshall Plan, who lived in Leesburg. We talk about the CIA headquarters, the NRO, National Reconnaissance Office headquarters in Chantilly, Virginia, and other historic Cold War sites in the Commonwealth. So I'm now writing my next book on Cold War California, and that'll be out sometime in late 2026. So eventually I'll get over and start to do a Cold War Europe book and a Cold War China book and a Cold War Taiwan book and all these other countries that were instrumental during the Cold War. So thank you very much for the invitation to join you today and give an overview of my efforts, the Cold War Museum, and what we're doing to help honor veterans, preserve history, and educate kids.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. And now I think I have some interesting question from your introduction, and maybe you can give us some information about this. First things is, as you are already engaged in the Cold War history, and how do you think about the Cold War meaning for the younger generation, because they have not involved in it yet, and they even in Taiwan, the Cold War or the something between China and Taiwan actually is already passed for maybe 40 years. So how do you think the meaning and for the younger generation, and at the same time, how as you in touch with the younger generation, how do they think about the Cold War, and how do they engage in the history or even the this site or the heritage?
Sure. Well, in America, our school system for high school students does not really teach a lot about the Cold War. Towards the end of the semester, they'll talk about World War II. They'll talk about the beginning of the Cold War with the Marshall Plan. Then they'll jump to the Cuban Missile Crisis, because that's one of the major Cold War events. And then they'll talk about the fall of the Berlin Wall. But they miss all of the other events and activities that shaped this 46-year period of time. Many students in America, when you ask them about the U-2 incident, they don't know. They think it has something to do with the U-2 rock band and not the U-2 spy plane. So this is one of the reasons we wanted to teach kids about Cold War history. It's so important to learn about Cold War history. Everything that's happening today in our world is a direct result of the end of the Cold War. From the war in Ukraine, that's a playbook right out of Cold War history. Putin, the East, Russia, fighting the West, just like during the Cold War. During the Cold War, it was Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, and now it's Ukraine. But it's the same type of situation that was happening in the Cold War that's happening again now. You look at the things that are happening in the Middle East with Gaza and Israel and Hamas. Now, I understand that that goes back to biblical times, but Israel as a state was created in 1947. That is a Cold War event. Palestine did not become a state. The tensions have continued to fester until today, where we have a war in the Middle East. This is why I believe it's so important to teach kids about Cold War history, so they understand what's happening in the world today based on what happened during the Cold War time period.
Yeah, thank you. And my second, and I think is the second question. Yes. How do you think about the attitude of the government in this kind of heritage and this period of the history? And because in for some reasons, I think the sites, the heritage site maybe are, or some military sites are still in use. So for the conservation part, how do they think about this?
Very good question. And I'm glad you asked that. I happen to have been the chairman for a presidential advisory committee on the Cold War theme study. And for 10 years, between about 2010 to 2020, I worked with leading Cold War historians and the National Park Service in America to identify Cold War historic sites that we need to preserve commemorate, and interpret. So for 10 years, we gathered this information. There is a book published online through the National Park Service. If you Google National Park Service Cold War Theme Study, it'll be the first link that pops up. And you can see these sites that we have identified that need to be preserved and commemorated. So it is very important to do that. A lot of governments don't understand the importance of preserving this history. In America, we had our Civil War back in the 1860s. There is a Civil War heritage trail throughout Virginia and some other states that fought in the Civil War. We are looking to create a Cold War heritage trail in America so that people can go and visit these Cold War sites around the country. That way they can learn about individual state history in the Cold War as well as national history during the Cold War. So these are some of the efforts that me and some of my colleagues are working on as we try to honor veterans, preserve history, and educate kids.
Yeah, thank you very much. And the last question in my part is what is the possible cooperation may have in the future in the international level, and how did you already did, and that's important. I think it's important, and there's several people are working in different countries, and
Yes.
what is a possible cooperation?
Another good question, the international aspect of preserving Cold War history. As a result of my interests, I have traveled extensively throughout Europe, Eastern Europe, Western Europe. I have friends in the Czech Republic who have opened up Cold War museums. One of them, Václav Vítovec, and I would suggest you reach out to him for this program. He has opened up an Iron Curtain Museum in Mísov, Czech Republic. It is a former nuclear storage weapon facility that the Soviets used during the Cold War. It is fully functional. He's created a museum out of it. He brings groups in to teach them about Cold War history in the Czech Republic and what the Soviets were doing. I've been there several times with my tour groups, as well as visiting him as a friend when I go over there. Another gentleman in Austria is, I just blanked. Another gentleman in Austria is Reinhard. Give me a second. We have to cut this out. Okay, there we go. So another one of my friends in Austria is Reinhard Hunger. He is a Cold War historian as well. He's been writing and gathering Cold War artifacts in Europe for many years. He will take old film that he can acquire from estate sales and eBay and other places. He'll digitize it. Then he'll be able to put it out online so people can learn and see Cold War history in film. Not only film as in movies, but also home movies, people walking around, filming these artifacts, filming these bunkers or bases, and he will take this film and put it out online for people to see. So he's done a wonderful job in preserving film Cold War history. Every country in Europe, for the most part, has a Cold War museum or a spy museum. There's the House of Terror in Hungary, in Budapest. There is the Museum of Communism in the Czech Republic, in Prague. There is a museum in Russia, in downtown Moscow, that's a Cold War museum. And many other countries have these type of venues. In Germany, of course, there's the Berlin Wall Museum, there's the Checkpoint Charlie Museum, there's the Willy Brandt Museum, and then other countries as well. Denmark, in Aalborg or near Aalborg, in the Rebuild area, has a nuclear bunker that's now a museum. They have a Rebuild Center that has Cold War displays. Then you have Copenhagen, also in Denmark, that have exhibits and displays on Cold War history in certain museums. So many of the European countries and American states have Cold War museums. I am not that familiar with Taiwan or China as to what type of displays they have there, but I do hope to get over to those two countries in the near future to do more research and find out about their Cold War history and study it more.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. I think our recording now is finished and we can start. I think in the future we will have a more cooperation and maybe have some official or unofficial network on the Cold War history and the heritage site.
Well,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Wang, Mr. Wang, thank you for
Yeah.
the invitation to talk to you today. I look forward to working with you and your colleagues in the future to preserve this Cold War history.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Take
Yeah,
care.
Thank you. Take care. Yeah.
Welcome. My name's Francis Gary Powers, Jr. I'm the founder of the Cold War Museum in Vint Hill, Virginia. I founded the Cold War Museum in 1996 to honor Cold War veterans, preserve Cold War history, and educate kids about this time period. I moved to Virginia in 1992 and started to give lectures on the U-2 incident to area high schools in the Northern Virginia area. 9 times out of 10, I'd walk into a classroom, I'd get blank stares from the kids. They thought I was there to talk about the U-2 rock band. That was the catalyst for the creation of the museum. Originally, I thought it would take 3 years to build, fundraise $3 million. Shouldn't be too difficult. But then it took 15 years to get brick and mortar. During that 15-year time period, we started to collect Cold War artifacts. We have items from the U-2 incident, from the SR-71 program, from the KH and Corona spy satellite program. We have items from East Germany, West Germany, the Soviet Union, and of course the USA. In addition, we have items from the USS Liberty incident, the USS Pueblo incident, overhead reconnaissance platforms, and a variety of activities and events that shaped the Cold War from 1945 through 1991. The museum is opened on the weekends. It's staffed by volunteers. More information online, coldwar.org. So here we have an exhibit on civil defense. Back in the mid-90s or the early 2000s, the Cold War Museum was able to salvage the Civil Defense Headquarters for Washington, D.C. This was located in Lorton, Virginia. So we have the original artifacts from that facility. The coffee cups, the mugs, the tables. We have the Bert the Turtle duck and cover films that were shown in the 1950s. We have different maps and different Geiger counters, one of which I have in my hand here that would be able to be used to show radioactivity. In addition, we have Motorola radio phones, the early predecessor to the cell phones of today. We have the siren in the background that would go off in the case of a nuclear war or a nuclear bomb being dropped in Washington, D.C. These sirens would sound and people would duck and cover and then find fallout shelters nearby to go into to survive a nuclear blast and the after effects. So at the Cold War Museum, we have a variety of displays on human intelligence, signals intelligence, electronic intelligence, and imagery intelligence. Behind us is a display case of imagery intelligence used during the Cold War. Specifically, we have Corona and KH spy satellites film that were actually flown in outer space that was captured by an airplane with the net dragging behind it. The first successful catch of this canister from outer space happened on August 17th of 1960. And in this display case, you can see a variety of panels and information on how this type of retrieval system operated.